meeting up with the Sheikh in Kuwait. Let's see those pictures, what you are seeing up on your screens. This is the Prime Minister. You remember, in a trip to a tour to Kuwait, the first Prime Minister, Indian Prime Minister, do so in the last 43 years. In many ways, this is considered to be a landmark visit. At this point of time, we are getting in fresh pictures also of the Prime Minister catching up with all the topmost leaders and the Sheikh in Kuwait. The Prime Minister is expected to come back later today, but for now, the Prime Minister has reached out to the Indian community who are involved there and also welcomed and appreciated the large Indian diaspora catching up with the Prime Minister. As I said, this is 43 years later. This is the first visit by an Indian Prime Minister. In fact, the Prime Minister has now meeting up with the Emir of Kuwait. There is going to be a resumption of bilateral talks between the two, trade ties, economic ties, energy talks. These are those important points which are likely to be discussed. And this is a roadmap where even Kuwait depends a lot on India as far as business and trade ties are concerned. In the first visit by the Prime Minister, any Indian Prime Minister to Kuwait in the last 43 years, this is considered in many ways to be a landmark visit. In fact, the Prime Minister met up with a large number of Indians, laborers working in Kuwait for many, many years. And that is when the Prime Minister called it Mini India. What you're seeing up on your screens are the first pictures coming in of the Prime Minister meeting up with the Emir of Kuwait. And it could be a resumption of bilateral ties between the two, talks between the two. Okay, we were talking about the Prime Minister's two-day visit to Kuwait. He left for it yesterday. He met people from across the Kuwait, the business community, the trade, the big leaders, and those pictures you're seeing up on your screens is that of the Emir. The bilateral ties, talks are going to begin the two, and this is a powerful message which India wants to send out, not just to Kuwait, but also to the entire Middle East. Kuwait also has its share in the past and a history of violence, and it's of course now on the massive road to recovery, but it's also depending a lot on India. Let me go across to my colleague Siddhant. Siddhant, I'm seeing those first pictures coming up of this bilateral meeting with the Prime Minister. How important would you say this diplomatic talks or the bilateral talks between the two countries is?
Well, Pallavi, this visit of Prime Minister Modi is significant. It's happening after a gap of 4 decades. And remember, Pallavi, we have a population of 1 million expats living in Kuwait. And given the geopolitical, location of Kuwait, perhaps it makes that country even more significant for India. In fact, Prime Minister did speak about the linkages between Kuwait and India. Goes back to pre-oil times in the Gulf, and there was established trade route. Both countries have advanced ports, and in fact, there was indeed a gap of 40 years for a high-level visit to take place to Kuwait, prime ministerial level visit. But in fact, in December, Pallavi, the foreign minister of Kuwait was in India, and both countries have formed a joint commission for cooperation, which was established during the visit of the foreign minister in December, and which is headed at the foreign minister's level. So that was a big milestone. And even 7 new joint working groups have also been established, Pallavi, which includes trade, investment, education, technology, agriculture, security, and culture. So these complement the 3 existing joint working groups in hydrocarbons, health, and consular matter, bringing the total number of joint working groups to 10. So today, when Prime Minister Modi will sit with the Kuwaiti leadership, perhaps he would review the entire spectrum of bilateral relationship with Kuwait. And there are existing 26 agreements and memorandums of understandings with Kuwait. There is a trade of $10.47 billion. Kuwait is India's 6th largest crude supplier. So somewhere India would also, try to find a scope of securing energy requirements of India when it comes to LPG, when it comes to crude supply. Kuwait is rich in both these hydrocarbon products. So that would also be the approach of Prime Minister Modi. And also, Pallavi, the most important, the welfare of the expats. In fact, if you see, Pallavi, It's been more than it's not even 24 hours. Prime Minister touching down in Kuwait City, and most of his engagements have been around the Indian community living in Kuwait, whether it's visiting the labor camp, meeting the diaspora at the hotel, then doing the Hala Modi event. And in fact, going for a soccer match, the opening ceremony of the soccer match, which again had spectators from the Indian diaspora. So the focus of this visit is the expats, because as Prime Minister also reiterated again that the India tops the remittances that any country gets all across the world from the expats. It's $192 billion. So that's a huge amount. So when these expats are contributing so much to the Indian economy, Prime Minister Modi had a very clear vision for them that it's his responsibility, it's India's responsibility to make sure that they live in good living conditions. They get what they want in the countries they are, and it's the Prime Minister Modi's responsibility to take up the matter with the host country regarding their welfare. And perhaps that will definitely come up when PM will speak to the Kuwaiti leadership. In fact, PM is thankful to the Kuwaiti leadership as far as the Al Mangaf fire tragedy is concerned, Pallavi, the kind of cooperation Kuwait.
So Siddhant, I was just coming to this. I want to ask you two important questions. One, I'm going to stay with the point which you were making, and a very interesting and a valid point. They've been called our ambassadors because they're also bringing money back to our country. And very few prime ministers of the world would perhaps take their time out and meet the expats. Would you say this was a powerful message in that interaction the Prime Minister had with the Indian laborers settled in Kuwait?
Well, absolutely, Pallavi. And Prime Minister, from day one, it's been 10 years of him being here in power. In fact, you have been covering Prime Minister's office more closely. His policies have always been people-centric. So when it comes to his foreign policy, so it may be to make India more stronger, powerful, muscular foreign policy, as we talk about, but, the focus has always been on the expats from day one. There have been the consular mechanism through which India time and again keeps interacting with the host governments regarding the welfare of the expats, what are their problems. Though those meetings are largely closed doors because India doesn't want to create any controversy around the living conditions of expats in especially in the Gulf countries, but India do take up that matter. And other than this, getting them visas, there are many applications available. Madad app. So if some expat it needs some help, then he could go on that app and register himself. Then there is always the consular services which are being offered to the Indian community, and we have a large number of Indian community, which is perhaps the soft power kind of. They project our soft power. They are the real brand ambassador, as Prime Minister always called them, the Asli Rajdoot, Desh ke Asli Rajdoot. So they are that. So even Prime Minister recognize their and acknowledge their contributions. At the same time, Prime Minister, it gives them a lot of strength, Pallavi. When Prime Minister goes and meet them, have chai pe charcha with them, as we were playing those visuals this morning, Pallavi, it fills them with a lot of energy.
Absolutely.
That, look, we have a Prime Minister who cares for us. And if we'll be in trouble tomorrow, then he is going to rescue us. He's going to evacuate us. And India has proven it time and again. The kind of evacuations India has done from Israel to Yemen to from Sudan to
as
Ukraine.
Also to the other countries where Indians are working and settled. I think it's also messaging to those countries, you have to look after our people. Again, the next big question I wanted to ask you, you were talking about the energy needs. That's going to be a part of the bilateral talks. Especially post Russia, Ukraine, India has been looking at alternative ways. I know there are many people abroad who used to criticize India sourcing it from Russia. Would you say that's what's been a part of a diplomatic policy? We are going to keep all our options open, and our energy needs two-way process, and that's why we're looking at alternatives so that we remain robust and self-reliant in the long run?
Well, that's right. We need to have multiple options available. In fact, EM S. Jaishankar has said this many times, that what's the problem if I'm smart enough to get crude at a cheaper price and perhaps I have multiple options available. And in fact, if you see Pallavi, Prime Minister's visit also from Brunei to Guyana to Nigeria, now to Kuwait, all these countries are rich in hydrocarbons. Okay. So there is somewhere India attaches importance to the energy requirements, and perhaps to always have this open communications with the countries which are hydrocarbon rich, so that that energy security has always been the top priority. And in fact, in case of Kuwait also, Kuwait remains a reliable energy partner, ranking as India's sixth largest supplier of crude oil and fourth largest supplier of LPG. Perhaps it's very much in India's interest to explore more opportunities when it comes to Kuwait, and also to negotiate and to make sure that we have more options available with us. So that is definitely going to be the priority when Prime Minister Modi will sit with the Kuwaiti leadership. And other than this, Pallavi, a very important one. If you remember, in COVID times, India did send medical teams to Kuwait for the expats, and Kuwaitis sent up, supplied over 425 metric tons of liquid medical oxygen, 12,500 of oxygen cylinders. That was a great help at that point in time when India was fighting with COVID. So that is only possible because of Prime Minister's effective foreign policy. And I was hearing this morning only, that how effectively Prime Minister Modi has managed to perhaps enhance good and maintain good relationship with the Gulf country. And even the Pakistani journalists are now saying that Prime Minister Modi has outmaneuvered Pakistan from the Gulf. Gulf now only and only belongs to India, because they also know that the growth, the investment is in India, and it's Indian expats which also bring a lot of credibility to the country. So, when Prime Minister Modi would sit, there's also going to be a lot of options that they will be given as far as the investment opportunities in India is concerned.
Yes, but this has to go back to the other big point which you also have been talking about, and you would perhaps know this, and I'm sure you know this actually, Siddhant. Choosing to go to Kuwait after 4 decades. I mean, people will question, why didn't any other prime minister before him think of this before? What could have been the immediate reasoning behind it? Why was it so important to go to Kuwait? What is the larger messaging coming in from the MEA and from the Prime Minister himself?
Well, Pallavi, there are a lot of reasons to it. One, that Kuwait is chairing the GCC group countries this year. So there also Kuwait has a very important role to play. Also, India is the negotiation.
Siddhant, I'm sorry to interrupt you here. I'm going to just I'm going to get in a point of view for the former ambassador, Anil Trigudayan, joining us. Thank you so much for speaking to CNN News 18. The same question which actually I was asking my colleague. 43 years later, an Indian Prime Minister deems to go to Kuwait, the significance of it.
Well, I think that this was, number one, is the Prime Minister's visit took a little while longer, only because there was a scheduling problems. And as you know, in Kuwait, 2 years ago, there was a change of guard. The previous Amir passed away. And then this visit has taken place, which has closed the gap as far as the GCC is concerned. So now Prime Minister has gone to all the countries. PM yesterday clearly mentioned about that there is a historic, cultural and commercial connect with the region, and we need to move it into a different direction. So all the GCC countries, all the Arab countries and the West Asian countries are extremely important for us. Besides, in the region, Kuwait is known to be one of the mediating countries, which also tries to bring about peace and all that. So therefore, that's important for us. Thirdly, this is a country which also has some kind of a very interesting democracy.
Okay.
But it is the noisiest democracy, as they call it. And as far as India-Kuwait relations are concerned, they have been going on very well. And unfortunate image, that visit deficit, high-level visit deficit, has been bridged under Prime Minister Modi in the last couple of years. And that is a very important thing, and I think that they understand about it. And they also want to continue to have closer partnerships. You remember that when their foreign minister was here recently, a new institutional mechanism has been agreed in addition to 30 plus MOUs agreements that we already have, which is to oversee the progress of all the projects, all the agreements, all the promises that we make, and we want to keep it. So that was very important. And the person also said that Prime Minister Modi is seen as the wisest leader. I mean, that is an important thing. So I think that the relationship is really will touch new heights. after this visit.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank
Trigunayan, for speaking to us. And of course, thanks to Siddhant also to putting all of this into perspective about the big Kuwait visit of the Prime Minister. That's it for me from now.